This happened a few months ago. I'm a 34-year-old long-haul truck driver. I often cover long, lonely stretches of highway at night. Late-night podcasts keep me awake. I've driven for years, but I still think about that one night. It was raining hard when I pulled into a small gas station. The neon lights flickered like they were struggling to stay alive. The place felt worn down, almost abandoned. Only the attendant was there, sitting behind the counter, looking comfortable in the quiet. While I filled my truck with gas, I heard a strange conversation. The attendant and a guy in a weathered jacket were whispering. I caught parts of their words, something about not missing it this time. I felt uneasy. When I walked in to pay, they stopped talking. The tension in the air felt thick. I shrugged it off. Maybe I was just tired. The next week I stopped at the same station again. The rain hadn't stopped, and the place was emptier. I filled up my tank, and the same attendant looked at me like he recognized me. The chill ran up my spine. I shook it off, thinking it was just my imagination. Inside, I spotted a woman in the corner, staring at the floor. When I blinked, she was gone. My heart raced, and I thought, I must be really tired. The third time, I pulled in again, needing gas. I didn't want to stop, but I had no choice. As I jumped out, the feeling of being watched filled me. I glanced at the pump. The fuel looked strange, almost iridescent. My hand hovered above the nozzle, and fear gripped me. I looked up, and the attendant was staring at me. His gaze was intense. I rushed to finish fueling and hurried inside. The attendant grinned at me, but it felt wrong. I handed him cash, and he said something that sent shivers down my spine. You should come back when it's darker. I didn't understand what he meant, but it made my stomach twist. I staggered out and quickly got back in my truck. As I drove away, I glanced in my rearview mirror. The station looked normal, but I could have sworn a figure was standing at the entrance, watching me leave. I brushed it off, thinking it must be the rain messing with my head. Months have passed, and I can't shake those encounters. I think about that place often. What were those two people talking about? Who was the woman? And why did the attendant say that to me? Sometimes when I find myself on that stretch of highway again, I feel the urge to stop. But I can't bring myself to do it. It terrifies me. I wonder if I'll ever get answers, or if that gas station will just haunt my mind forever. I feel like there's something there, waiting for me. The following month, I found myself driving the same stretch of highway again. Night had fallen, and the familiar anxiety buzzed beneath my skin. The rain was gone, but the feeling didn't leave with the clouds. I told myself I wouldn't stop at that gas station. But as the fuel light flickered on, logic faded faster than the last rays of daylight. I pulled into the lot, the neon sign buzzing ominously over me. The place looked unchanged, yet somehow, it felt even more sinister. The attendant was behind the counter, his eyes locking onto mine the moment I stepped in, as if he'd been waiting for me. The silence was chilling. I tried to shake the feeling and grabbed a coffee. My hands trembled as I poured it, splattering some on the counter. "You're back," he said, his voice smooth, but it carried an edge that made my heart race. "Just filling up," I replied, forcing a laugh. But his expression didn't change. He just kept staring at me, and I shifted my weight uncomfortably. Then I noticed something out of place. A faded newspaper on the counter caught my eye. A headline read, "Missing woman found near gas station." My blood ran cold. I picked it up and skimmed the article. I could hardly breathe as I read. The same woman I had seen in the corner all those weeks ago. She had vanished while traveling and was last seen near this very station. I dropped the paper as if it burned my hands, my mind racing. Was she the figure I thought I'd seen? Why didn't I put this together before? "Are you okay?" the attendant asked, his tone shifting just enough to make me uneasy. I shot him a look, trying to hide my panic. "I need to go." I backed away but felt glued to the ground. "You can't just hang around here." He leaned closer, a grin spreading across his face that didn't reach his eyes. "But it's only getting started." I feared what he meant but couldn't linger. I turned to leave, my pulse hammering in my ears. As I rushed back outside, I felt a presence. Looking over my shoulder, I caught a glimpse of the corner of my eye. The same woman again. She stood near a dim light, her features obscured. A shadow of her former self. I stumbled to my truck, climbing inside as the panic took over. My hands shook as I fumbled for the keys. Just as I started the engine, I caught a reflection outside. The attendant stood in the doorway, still watching. I didn't look back as I sped off. My breath came in short bursts, and I fought the urge to glance in the rearview mirror. I could feel it. Something dark was waiting. Should I return? The questions haunted me. I hadn't solved anything. I was only left with more nightmares. Even as the highway stretched ahead, I knew deep down I hadn't escaped. As I drove on, I could feel there was no avoiding it. I had to find out the truth, even if it meant facing whatever was lurking in that gas station once more. The next day, I couldn't shake the images from my mind. The woman's face lingered, haunting my thoughts. I had to know what happened. I drove back to the gas station, fighting the knots in my stomach. The sun was up, but the dread from the night before wrapped around me like a shroud. I pulled into the lot, feeling like I was stepping onto the set of a horror movie. The attendant was still there, his eyes narrowing as I walked in. This time, I noticed a security camera blinking overhead. It felt like being under a spotlight. "Back for more?" he asked, pretending to be friendly. I forced a smile. "Figured I should check out the place in daylight." "Good idea," he replied, leaning against the counter. "There's a lot more here than what meets the eye." I looked around, hoping to find clues. The shelves were stocked with snacks and drinks, but my focus remained on the old newspaper displayed at the front. I picked it up again, the headline glaring back at me. Suppressing a shudder, I scanned it for more details. "That must bring back memories," the attendant said, his voice low and smooth. There was something unsettling in his tone. "What do you know about it?" I shot back, feeling anger rising. "More than you think," he said, folding his arms. "These places, they hold stories, you know? Stories of those who come and go." My heart raced. What happened to her? The woman? His grin widened. "Ah, that's the mystery, isn't it? But you're here now. What do you want? Closure?" I clenched my fists, staving off panic. "I want to know what happened to her. Is this a joke to you?" He shrugged, feigning indifference. "Just another day. But every traveler is a story waiting to be told." Suddenly, I heard a faint sound from the back room, a soft thud that didn't belong in an empty gas station. My instincts kicked in. I stepped toward the doorway, spine prickling. "What's back there?" "Nothing important," he said too quickly. "Just stock." I hesitated, but the unease grew louder. "I want to see." Before he could respond, I pushed through the door. The room was dim, shelves filled with supplies. Then my eyes landed on something dangling from the wall, an old torn poster of the missing woman, faded but recognizable. That's when I saw it. Beneath the poster, a collection of photographs, all of different women, all missing. My breath hitched in my chest. "Get away from there," the attendant shouted from behind me, his voice sharp like glass. I turned to face him, adrenaline surging. "What is this?" "How far are you willing to go for the truth?" he asked, his demeanor shifting, menace radiating from him as he advanced. I understood then. I had stepped too far, and I might not be leaving this place after all. I took a step back, and the shadows in the room seemed to deepen. The attendant loomed closer, his presence swallowing the space between us. I needed to think fast. Whatever I had stumbled into was dangerous. "Why do you have these?" I asked, my voice trembling despite my efforts to sound brave. His grin faded, replaced by a smirk that sent chills racing down my spine. "They're reminders," he replied, his eyes gleaming with something dark. Reminders of lost souls. Panic began to bubble inside me. I scanned the room for anything that could help. A fire extinguisher hung near the wall. I could grab it and run, but that wouldn't stop him. I had to know more. "Please, just tell me what happened to her," I said, desperation creeping in. "Why are you doing this?" He shrugged again, his casual demeanor at odds with the tension in the air. "You're not the first to ask, you know. The woman, she was just another face passing through. But she didn't leave. What do you mean? Didn't leave? The words slipped out. I could hardly process the implications. Some stories don't have a happy ending. There was a hunger in his expression, as if he savored this moment. The control, the fear in my eyes. I needed to escape. I turned back to the door, but he blocked my way, eyes narrowing dangerously. I reached for the fire extinguisher, but before I could grab it, he barked a laugh. Running won't help you. It's only going to make things worse. My pulse raced. Then what do you want? I demanded, fighting to keep my voice steady. Your story. Everyone has one. His gaze pierced through me. You want answers. I want to know why you care so much. Are you connected to her? Did you know her? I shook my head, but his words struck a nerve. I didn't know the woman, yet I felt drawn to her. Why? My hands were sweating. I couldn't show weakness now. Suddenly, the fluorescent lights flickered, casting eerie shadows around us. A low rumble echoed from the back of the station like a warning. The attendant's expression darkened. Time to choose, he said. Stay with me and learn the truth, or leave and risk never knowing what really happened to her. Or to you. My instinct screamed for me to flee, but something held me there. Curiosity? Fear? I couldn't tell the difference anymore. And then, a loud crash shattered the tense silence. It came from outside, and the attendant's smirk dropped as he turned, momentarily distracted. I seized the chance. I darted past him, out the door, heart pounding like a drum in my chest. But as I ran, I could feel his eyes boring into my back. I could hear him shouting, but I didn't stop. As I burst into the sunlight, I stumbled into the parking lot. My car felt like a lifeline. I frantically fumbled with the keys, glancing back at the gas station. But a figure stood at the door, watching me. It wasn't the attendant. Another woman, with a face so hauntingly familiar it made my skin crawl. Help me, she murmured, her voice barely audible over the pounding in my ears. And as I looked closer, I realized I knew that face. My heart dropped. This was just the beginning. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. The woman at the door looked just like the woman in the photographs, her eyes wide with fear, yet somehow pleading. Every instinct told me to run, to dive back into the safety of my car. But the weight of her stare held me captive. Help me, she repeated, her voice trembling as if it cost her to say the words. There was a desperation in her tone that tugged at something deep within me. I blinked, trying to process it all. Who are you? I finally managed to ask, my voice barely louder than a whisper. The woman's lips quivered. I need to get away from him. Please. She pointed back toward the gas station, but the attendant had disappeared into the shadows. What happened to you? What do you mean, away from him? Panic surged again. I felt the ground shift beneath my feet as dread settled in. I waited, hoping for answers, but all I got was silence. A thunderous roar broke the tension as a truck rumbled into the parking lot, its engine growling like a beast. My gaze snapped to the vehicle, then back to the woman. She flinched as the sound rose and fell, her eyes darting to the gas station. Get in, I urged, my mind racing. We need to get out of here. I motioned toward my car, feeling foolish for offering my help to a stranger. But she seemed so familiar, and I couldn't abandon her. She hesitated, dread clouding her features. I don't know if that's safe. He'll find me. Who is he? You have to tell me, I insisted, urgency edging into my voice. The truck's driver stepped out and looked around, scanning the lot. I knew we had to hurry. Before she could respond, I grabbed her by the arm and started moving toward my car. She followed, and I could feel the weight of her fear like a heavy cloak. As we reached my vehicle, I fumbled with the door. Get in, I begged again. She slid into the passenger seat, her expression a mix of hope and shattered nerves. I quickly jumped in, locking the doors just as I felt a chill sweep over me. I glanced back at the gas station, half expecting the attendant to burst outside. Instead, the air was still, almost thick with unspoken tension. What happened to you? I pressed again, feeling the urgency of the moment. I was here a few days ago. He tried to keep me, to make me stay. Her voice dropped to a whisper, and I leaned in closer, heart racing again. I don't know how many he's taken, but he feeds off their stories. Feeds off them? I was confused, but I could see her sincerity. He collects them, and when he's finished, they're gone. Her eyes were wide, glistening with unshed tears. Please, you have to understand. Even if you leave now, he'll come for you. I shook my head, disbelief crashing over me like an icy wave. This isn't happening. But deep down, I knew it was all too real. That's when I saw it, a flicker of movement at the gas station. The attendant re-emerged, his shadow stretching unnaturally across the ground like a predator stalking its prey. "Drive!" she yelled, but it was too late. The doors cracked open, like the roar of a thunderstorm before the deluge. I didn't know what was coming next, but something told me this was only the beginning of a long nightmare. I barely registered the door creaking open before the attendant's face came into view. His expression was unreadable, but there was an unsettling calm in his eyes. I felt cold dread shoot through me. I pressed the key in the ignition and turned it, but the engine coughed and sputtered like it was in on the joke. I slammed my hands on the steering wheel, panic rising again. Come on, I whispered to the car, willing it to start. The woman beside me flinched, eyes wide with terror. "He knows we're here," she warned, her voice barely above a whisper, but the urgency was clear. The attendant leaned against the doorway, shadows playing tricks on his face. His smile was too wide, too knowing. "You won't get away that easily," he said, his voice a low drawl. At the sound of his words, I felt my resolve wavering. "We need to go," I shouted, but my heart was pounding in my throat. As if in response to my desperation, the engine sputtered again and finally roared to life. I slammed the gear into reverse, my foot pressing the gas pedal hard. But the attendant didn't move. He lifted one hand, palm facing me as though he commanded the car to stop. I glanced at the woman, who was shaking her head in fear. "Don't look at him!" she urged, her eyes darting around, searching for a way out. "He's trying to control you! Just go!" With a gut feeling urging me on, I threw the car into drive and tore out of the parking space, skidding onto the gravel. I barely avoided the edge of the gas pump as I sped into the night, my breath ragged. "What now?" I shouted over the engine's roar. The darkness enveloped us, the only light coming from the dashboard. "Just drive," she said frantically. "I don't know how long we have, but he'll follow." The trees lined the road like hunched figures, and the shadows seemed to close in tighter, wrapping around us. I glanced in the rearview mirror. The gas station dwindled away, but a part of me felt that the attendant was watching even from a distance, a looming presence that wouldn't be so easily shaken off. Then I heard it, a low, growling sound that echoed in the distance, amplifying my anxiety. "What is that?" I asked, unease gnawing at my gut. She shook her head. "He can summon things. We have to keep moving, please." I focused on the road ahead, pushing the gas pedal down further, praying the car would hold together. Suddenly, a shape emerged in the middle of the road. I slammed on the brakes, skidding to a stop just inches from a figure standing there. It was another woman, looking just as ragged and disheveled as the one beside me. Her expression matched our fear, eyes darting between my car and the forest surrounding us. "Help!" she screamed, her voice raw. I felt hope surge in my chest, but then I remembered the attendant's words. "No, we can't stop!" I shouted, desperate to keep moving. The woman stalked closer, her features flickering in and out of clarity under the car's headlights. "Please, you don't understand. He'll take you too," she pleaded, even as I put the car in reverse, avoiding her gaze. But my heart sank. Now 2 figures were caught in this nightmare, and I was starting to realize that no matter how fast I drove, shadows would chase us, drawing nearer with every turn. As I turned back onto the open road, the landscape began to twist. The trees faded and morphed, bleeding into shadows, and I felt like I was plunging deeper into a labyrinth of darkness. That's when I saw it. The gas station, looming again, as if it never left. The gas station stood proud against the night, its flickering neon sign casting an unnatural glow. I couldn't grasp it. How could it be there again? I blinked in disbelief, but the disconcerting reality remained. "It's like a mirage," the woman beside me muttered. "We have to turn around, it's a trap." Her voice quivered with urgency, Yet I felt a pull toward the familiar structure. I wanted to scream and not scream at the same time. "We can't go back," I replied hoarsely, fighting the rising panic in my chest. The shadows seemed to stretch and twist from the edges of the gas station, as if they were alive, pulsating with some heinous energy that pushed against my skin. Just then, a flicker of movement caught my eye. I turned my head sharply, trying to focus on the source. To my horror, I saw a figure at the side of the building. It was tall and cloaked, standing unnaturally still. I felt a chill creep down my spine. "Did you see that?" I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "The attendant," she said, her eyes wide. "Please, don't look." My heart raced, but instinct took over. I instinctively turned the car toward the gas station. I knew how reckless it was, but I was tired of running. I had to know more. I was tangled up in this horror, and curiosity clawed at me. As I approached, a thin mist rolled across the ground. I hesitated, ready to slam the brakes, but the woman beside me gripped my arm. "No! Just go!" "Where do we go?" I snapped back, feeling confinement uppercut my reason. The attendant was bringing something here, something worse than my own confusion. Before I could respond, the cloaked figure moved out of the shadows and into the beam of the headlights. It was a woman, her face obscured, wisps of hair hanging in front of her eyes. "Help me," she rasped, her voice a hollow echo. I felt my pulse quicken again. What kind of game was this? "We can't," I shouted instinctively. But I wasn't sure who I was trying to protect, us or her. "Please," she begged, and I saw her outstretched hand tremble. A chilling laughter drifted from the dark, low and mocking, resonating with an unknown threat. A hard knock echoed from the driver's side window, startling me. The attendant stood there, grinning. I locked eyes with him. "You shouldn't have come back." His voice reverberated with a deep malice that sent a jolt through me. I whipped my gaze back to the road. Suddenly, the mist deepened. The headlights struggled to cut through. Visibility shrank, and the car filled with an eerie silence. I felt lost, trapped in a world slipping through my fingers. "They're not real," the woman whispered, shaking her head vigorously. "Don't engage. We need to escape." I had a decision to make. From the depth of my gut, I felt instinct tugging me to back away, yet my hand hovered over the gear shift, torn between flight and the desperate impulse to save the woman. Then, everything went dark. When I opened my eyes, the darkness shimmered like an old television screen that had lost its signal. I blinked repeatedly, trying to shake off the disorientation. The car was still moving, but it was like we were no longer in control. The landscape outside felt wrong, distorted and blurred, as though we were driving through liquid shadow. "Where are we?" I muttered, mainly to myself. "You should have driven away!" the woman squawked, panic thickening her voice. I could see her framed against the dim light from the dashboard. Her pupils were wide, glistening like black marbles, and her breath fell in quick, uneven bursts. "It was too late," I responded, feeling the weight of something heavy press down on my chest. "I can't explain it." Just then, something flickered in the rearview mirror. A pair of headlights emerged from the darkness, slowly gaining on us. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, a sense of dread climbing up my throat. "We have company," I said, my voice hoarse. "What do we do?" she stammered. I squinted into the mirror. The vehicle behind us looked ancient, its frame rusted, the paint worn and faded. It was a ghost of a car that should have been long forgotten. But it moved smoothly, effortlessly closing the gap between us. My heart sank. Then I heard it, a deep rumbling that vibrated through the chassis. It wasn't just from the car behind, it was something else, something resonating from the gas station we'd just left. Like a distant drum roll, a low pulse that matched the beating of my heart. "Keep driving, don't look back," I urged, feeling the weight of unseen eyes upon us. But she turned her head anyway, glancing through the side window. "Oh no," she gasped, and I couldn't resist. I hated how curiosity consumed me. I turned and looked. What I saw sent a wave of ice slicing through my veins. In the car behind us, the same cloaked figure sat in the passenger seat. Despite the distance, I could feel its gaze boring into my back, a predatory intensity that suffocated. "Speed up!" she yelled, panic fueling her voice. I slammed the accelerator, the tires screaming against the asphalt. But the other car was relentless, staying close, as if tethered by some dark force. I could feel the oppressive weight of our pursuer, faint echoes of laughter swirling in the air. "We need to get off the highway!" I shouted back as the road twisted ahead. The gas station loomed closer, its dull glow pulling at my nerves. I could see the attendant standing there again, his silhouette a clear, taunting figure even in the growing darkness. "Are you mad?" she cried. But something compelled me. The woman from earlier, the one begging for help, flickered through my mind. If she was real, maybe there was a path through this nightmare, or maybe I was simply spiraling deeper into it. As I veered off the main road and into the gas station's lot, I abruptly hit the brakes. The screech of tires on gravel felt deafening. Why was I doing this? The darkness seemed to flutter around the edges of my vision, whispering secrets I didn't want to hear. And then, like a shadow under the gas station's flickering lights, I saw movement. A figure stepped out from the building, a dogged grin slicing through the dark, an unmistakable look of satisfaction on his face. "We've been expecting you," he said, and everything in me twisted. The gas station was more than a mere stop. It was a crossroads I couldn't escape, but the temptation to turn back was overpowering. Before I could second-guess myself, I threw the car into reverse, intent on crashing through the fear. That's when I felt it. Someone sat in the back seat. My heart raced, every pulse echoing in the stillness of the car. I had never felt terror like this, a cold kind spreading from my fingertips to my toes. I forced myself to look in the rearview mirror again. The back seat was shrouded in darkness, but I could see a shape, slumped, yet somehow menacing. "Did you see that?" I croaked, my voice barely audible. "What?" she asked, her face twisted in disbelief. "The back seat," I replied, pointing as if it would somehow make it more real. "There's someone there." She twisted around, eyes wide, but there was nothing, just the empty, shadowy space where fear had taken residence. "You're imagining things. We need to—" Before she could finish, the figure shifted. I could feel its presence now, pressing against the fabric of the car, compressing the air around us. "Drive!" I barked, panic overwhelming my sense of logic. I slammed the gear back into drive, barely processing the crunch of gravel beneath the wheels. The cloaked figure in the rear seat seemed to lean forward. I caught a glimpse of its face, pale, almost luminescent, with sunken eyes that glowed like dying embers. The sight turned my stomach. "Faster! We can't stop!" she screamed, clutching the dashboard. The gas station and its attendant faded behind us as we accelerated into the nothingness of the road. But the car behind us wasn't slowing down. It was as if we were tethered to it, the ominous headlights bearing down relentlessly. I took a quick glance back. The cloaked figure was no longer just watching. It was moving, reaching out, and I felt a cold rush of air sweep through my car, snatching my breath away. "What is happening?" she shouted, her voice trembling. "I don't know," I yelled back, trying to keep calm. I gritted my teeth and pressed harder on the gas pedal, the engine roaring. I glanced again into the rearview mirror, and my stomach dropped. The passenger seat of the pursuing car was empty. The cloaked figure had vanished from sight. Then, as if sensing my fear, the headlights flared, illuminating the night with an ethereal glow. And suddenly, the rumble from earlier returned, vibrating beneath us like some great beast awakening. I could feel it thudding in my chest, a steady beat that syncopated with the pulse of the fast-approaching vehicle. "They're getting closer!" she cried, her voice laced with terror. I needed to think, to do something that made sense, but logic slipped through my fingers like sand. Out of desperation, I steered sharply onto a side road, an unmarked path bordered by thick trees. My heart raced as we plunged into the darkness, leaving the gas station and the figure behind. The headlights faded slightly, but the unsettling sense of being hunted remained. And just then the temperature dropped. It became almost unbearable. The air turned thick, suffocating, as if we were moving through water. I glanced at her. The panic had given way to something else, something I couldn't identify. "Look!" she suddenly exclaimed, pointing. Through the trees I saw a flicker of light. What is that? I squinted into the gloom. There was definitely something ahead, pulsating, calling to us. Part of me screamed to keep driving, to get as far away as possible. But an odd curiosity gripped me, urging me to investigate. I needed to know what lay ahead. As I drew closer, I felt a familiar drum roll echo in my mind, and dread washed over me. Whatever promise that light held, I knew it wouldn't be good. Just as I prepared to turn back yet again, the car's engine stalled. And then the lights went out. The sudden darkness enveloped us, swallowing any remnants of light. My heartbeat thundered in the silence, pounding against my ribcage like a caged animal desperate for escape. I fumbled for the ignition, but the engine remained silent, dead against my efforts. Panic rushed into my veins, and I turned to the woman beside me, her silhouette shaking in the dark. "What do we do?" My voice trembled, but all I could hear was the echo of my fear. "Get out!" she urged, her eyes wide and wild. "We can't stay here. He'll find us." A snarl of determination shot through me. I opened the door and stepped into the murky darkness, the chill cutting through my clothes. The faint light pulsating through the trees drew me forward, illuminating a narrow path swathed in cobwebs and leaves. I hesitated, glancing back at the car, longing to drive away from this nightmare. But something rooted me to the ground. "Come on!" she cried, urgency thick in her voice. "We've got to go before it's too late!" I turned, and together we plunged into the woods, dodging branches that seemed to reach out like skeletal fingers. The atmosphere thickened, the air heavy with foreboding, yet I pressed on, driven by an instinct I couldn't articulate. Eventually, we emerged into a clearing bathed in a rice paper glow. There, in the center, stood an altar of sorts. Oddly geometric stones piled haphazardly, but arranged as if beckoning. They pulsed rhythmically, casting an eerie light that illuminated the faces of lost souls etched into the rock. I recognized the women, each one a ghost of the figures I'd seen before. My breath hitched with understanding. "What is this place?" I gasped, my skin prickling. "I don't know," she replied, trembling beside me. "But we can't stay here. We have to destroy it." Desperation clawed at my insides. "How?" I whispered, panic creeping back. Then I glanced back at the darkened woods. What if he finds us? A noise emerged from behind, the faint rustle of leaves that seemed to grow louder. I felt a surge of terror. "We need to do something," I urged, my mind racing, scanning for something to use. "We use our stories," she said suddenly, her eyes bright with intensity. "It feeds off them. We have to reclaim what it's stolen." "Reclaim?" I didn't understand, but adrenaline surged within me, propelling my thoughts forward. The faint murmurs from the altar grew louder, whispering forgotten tales, and imprinted in my mind, images of the woman I had seen previously flashed across my memory. "The stories must be connected to us," I exclaimed, the realization hitting me. "If we share what happened, what we know, maybe it will lose its power." She nodded, her gaze resolute. "Yes! We have to force it out into the light." As the noises from the woods grew closer, I closed my eyes. I thought of the road, the gas station, the attendant's unsettling grin. The weight of their stories pressed against me like a floodgate about to burst. I exhaled and opened my mouth, pouring my nightmares into the ether. I was trapped in the night, haunted by shadows, I began. The gas station, but the moment I spoke, another figure materialized from the darkness behind us. The attendant emerged, his smile wider than ever, eyes glinting like shards of glass. "You shouldn't have come here," he said, his voice smooth yet laced with menace. "Every story has its price." I felt the pulse of the altar quicken, resonating with the fear coursing through me. The air thickened, constricting as he stepped forward. It seemed he thrived in the chaos of our pain, feeding on our terror. "No!" I shouted, summoning my courage. "You will not take our stories!" I continued to share everything in desperate breaths, weaving the truth of my encounters and the weight of the women's faces I had seen. Beside me, she followed, her voice unsteady but rising with fervor. "You don't control us anymore." The altar pulsed in response, the glow intensifying, feeling alive as though consuming our words and transforming them. The more we spoke, the more fragmented the attendant looked, his form wavering. But just as it seemed like our stories might overpower him, the ground began to shudder. "Your voices won't be enough," he hissed, anger etched across his face. "You cannot escape me." As if summoned by his words, shadows erupted from the trees. Figures began to swirl around us, lost souls, the echoes of the past. I felt the energy shift ominously. The woman looked at me, a sense of rising fear reflecting back. "What do we do?" she shouted over the chaos, a plea breaking through. The stories were ours, but they were also theirs. In an instinctive wave of understanding, I yelled, "Join us! Join our voices!" The figures hesitated, as if pulled by the gravity of my words. "I am not your keeper," I cried. "You have power, share it." One by one, the whispers joined ours, echoing through the clearing, merging the past and present. The attendant leaned back, outrage twisting his face into a mask of fury, but the altar began to swallow him whole, shadows pulling him into their grasp. In a blinding flash, the landscape rippled. Light broke through the darkness, and for a heartbeat, I felt free. Then, there was nothing. I opened my eyes. We were back at the gas station. The sun hung low on the horizon, casting a golden hue over the empty lot. The attendant was gone. The gas station nothing more than an illusion, a vestige of something darker. I turned to the woman beside me, relief coursing through my veins. Did we do it? Did we escape? But she only stared into the woods. "I don't know," she said slowly, confusion clouding her features. "But the stories, they're still out there." With uncertainty lingering in the air, we stood there, shadows fading against an uncertain dawn. I wanted to believe we were safe, but deep down, I felt an unshakable truth. We left questions unanswered, and the gas station still loomed behind us, a dark echo. I moved to a different route, vowing never to return. Yet I couldn't shake the unease. Sometimes, late at night on the open road, I'd catch a glimpse of headlights in my rearview mirror, and I would panic, uncertain if the darkness behind me had really vanished or if it was just lying in wait, ready for the next traveler.